Oh, how are you? Thank you for having me. This year was a very, very difficult year for the last years. There were a lot of queues and there was a lot of deaths recorded at the border post, which never happened before. If you look at dates like 23 December in 2019, we had 17,341 travelers who used the border post on that day. But if you look at the same date, 23 December 2020, we had 11,210 people who used the border post. But the problem was the process was extended due to COVID-19. The regulations made it very, very difficult, especially on the Zimbabwean side where there was not enough manpower, and at the same time regulations were more difficult at the Zimbabwe side. Also, the other problem was Zimbabwe failed to open their borders in time, and people were locked into South Africa and couldn't go out of South Africa until the 1st of December. And I believe that the South African government needs to put more security forces. I know that the South African Defence Forces around the border, but I think there's need for them to permanently patrol around the border, because people are being killed by robbers called Guma Guma. So those some of things that is to be done. And at the same time, there's a lot of corruption at the border post, making things very, very difficult, delaying queues. Because the moment officials demand money from travelers, it makes everything difficult. It makes travelers opt cheaper ways to cross into South Africa or out of South Africa, which is using ungazetted points of entry, and they will be risking their lives from drowning into Limpopo River or being killed by robbers along the beach and the river.
Dennis, what plan needs to be put in place to manage the borders? Because there is the prospect of major congestion again when holiday makers return to South Africa in the coming weeks.
Yes, it's known. It's not like we are predicting that there will be congestion. It's something which is known, and I think the border management team should make sure that they have enough manpower. And at the same time, I believe that we should have some border officials at the points of departure. We don't have a lot for points of departure in South Africa. If you are going to Zimbabwe, you get transport from Newtown, you get transport from Power House, and lastly, you get transport from Park Station. So if we can have maybe some border officials checking documentation at those points of departures, it makes easier for the border to process the movement of people at the border.
Let's expand a little bit on what you touched on when you spoke about corruption. We know that some truck drivers alleged to have wanting to skip the queue and pay up to 1,000 Rand in bribes. What do you think needs to be done to avoid this sort of behavior?
I think South Africa should send more private officials there. Check what's going on, because for someone to get just days at the South African side, there's no one who can come to get days without paying anything, and this is known. Everyone knows that. And also at the Zimbabwean side, for someone to cross into Zimbabwe with their goods, you need to go through a lot of checkpoints where you need to pay some bribes. So I think something should be done where each visitor is given, say, a maximum of 90 days when crossing into South Africa, something which is not compromised, something that doesn't need an official to decide whether to give this person how many days. It should be official that people coming into South Africa should get a certain number of days, which doesn't change. It should not change. It should remain the same so that, officials don't demand bribes from travelers.
And how do you believe that the level 3 lockdown imposed by the president sort of makes any sort of change when it comes to the processes that need to be underway at the border post?
Nothing much, unless we hear what the Home Affairs Minister say on this level 3, because there's not a lot of changes. We are not sure what is the contents of level 3 regulations when it comes to border. So we are still waiting for the Home Affairs Minister to elaborate on this level 3 lockdown.
And very lastly, what would you say are some of your biggest concerns at this point in time as we anticipate the holidaymakers to return?
There's not enough health officials at the border to test people. I appeal to the government to make sure that there's more health officials testing people, because that's where the problem is. When people are getting tested, waiting for the results, that's where the delay is. And it's usual that it's always congested during this period at the border post. And if you look at the figures were not that much, a lot, but the process made everything difficult. And I still believe that the South African government was and is still supposed to consult the Zimbabwean government when anything at the border, so that we don't have stalemates like what we have at the moment. There's a stalemate between the South African government and the Zimbabwean government, and the one who suffers are the travelers. We have nothing to do with their stalemate. So the decisions at the border need to be uniform. Zimbabwe cannot decide on the border alone without consent from the South African government, and the same applies to the South African government. They cannot decide without consulting the Zimbabwean government. So right now, buses are not loading people who do not have a South African resident work or start permit. So that should be loosened, because people want to use buses. That's the cheapest mode of transport, and if people are not allowed to use buses, then the border is going to be congested. Everyone will have to use their own light vehicles to cross into South Africa, especially after the 1st of January. So the South African government needs to talk to their Zimbabwean counterparts about this regulation, which doesn't allow ordinary people to use buses. So I think this is one of the things that we are appealing to the South African government to do.
Very well. Thank you for your time. Border control measures being ironed out there. Dennis Juru are giving us a sense of what needs to happen to avoid that chaotic traffic jam that got the country talking.